Let me tell you a little bit about Jim. He is 66 years of age. He lives in San Jose, California. For the first 13 years or so after he graduated from college in 1968, he was a policeman with the San Jose Police Department. Had a very successful career with them. And for the last 18 years, Jim has been motivating people around the world as an inspirational, motivational speaker. Jim is also very proud of the fact that for the last 20 years he has been a championship senior softball player, playing in tournaments at the highest levels that one can play softball, and has been a star player for them. He is also very proud of the fact that through the years he was able to teach his sons how to be competitive football players and baseball players, and beginning to teach his grandsons how to play baseball in particular. All that really began to change in the summer of 2009. Jim began experiencing back pain, muscle pain, and shortness of breath. Jim Hellam was diagnosed with malignant mesothelioma in September of 2011. In November 2011, Mr. Hellam underwent what is probably one of the most difficult surgeries that a human being can undergo. It's called an extrapleural pneumonectomy, and it involves removal of his entire left lung and the pleura, the lining of his left lung. The doctors informed Jim that this cancer is caused by breathing asbestos dust. Jim Hellam was exposed to asbestos for 5 summers, beginning in 1962 when he was 15 years old. For 5 summers he worked with his grandfather, who ran a one-man operation in Monterey, California called Monterey Boiler Service. And the business really consisted of repairing boilers around the area and refurbishing old boilers for sale. The unfortunate reality is that among the kinds of materials that you use inside of boilers are materials that contain asbestos, and in particular insulating cements and sheet gasketing materials that contained asbestos. When Jim Hellam learned that this disease was caused by exposure to asbestos, he came to our firm and said he wanted justice. He wanted the people that had caused this disease to answer for what they had done. We learned that among the companies that supplied these products to Monterey Boiler Service was a company called Crane Supply in Salinas, California. Crane Supply at the time was a subsidiary of a company called Crane Co. out of Chicago. The verdict was that Crane Co. was liable for having caused Mr. Hellam to develop this disease, and that Crane Co.'s products that they sold to Mr. Hellam's grandfather, were defective and didn't have any warnings on them. And that as a result of the use of these defective products, Mr. Hellam's disease was caused in part by the products that Crane Co. sold to his grandfather. The jury then came back and determined that Mr. Hellam had suffered damages as a result of this illness. They determined that he had suffered over $900,000 in economic damages, which included compensation for his past and future medical expenses and his past and future economic losses, his income losses. The jury also determined that Mr. Hellam had suffered what are called non-economic damages, typically called pain and suffering damages, in the amount of $4,500,000. The experience of representing Mr. Hellam in this case was very profound, and to have had the opportunity to represent Mr. Hellam in this trial was, to me, what makes the work here all worthwhile.